let's say you have this big party coming up or something, and you want to bake a bunch of pizza for the party. Maybe you're a professional pizziato. I can't remember the term. Someone who makes pizza. Or maybe you're just some sort of hobbyist, but you want a very precise way to calculate recipes. So if you don't already know, baker's percentages, we just take the amount of flour we have, which we'll just call F. Let's say we have 100 grams. We're going to use a very simple 100 so we can do percentages real easily just for this example. So a typical recipe would be 65% hydration, which out of 100 would equal 65 grams. And then 1.5 grams for the salt, or 1.5%. And 1% for the yeast, or just 1 gram of yeast. The problem is, if we're trying to make a bunch of pizza and we know how much dough we need, but we don't know how much flour to use along with all the other percentages to get the amount of dough we need. We would need a formula for that. And there may be some guides on the internet on how to do this, but I'm stubborn and I kind of just figured it out myself with algebra. And I wanted to show this because this is a very cool usage of algebra for coming up with a recipe. So this right here for water, salt, and yeast, this is a very typical dough recipe, and we'll just use this to create any arbitrarily sized amount of dough. So let's say our typical dough for a single pizza, we're going to do a subscript pizza, and this will be about 270 grams per pizza. So 270 grams per pizza dough. Let's say if we wanted to make, let's say, 8 pizzas. So D total would equal the pizza times 8. And this is a little chicken scratch. I'm sorry about that. D pizza times 8, which, if I put that in my calculator, equals 2160 grams. So we know how much pizza in total, or how much dough in total we need for 8 pizzas. So if we put this in a recipe, we need some amount of pizza dough, 2160 grams, equals what? How much flour are we going to use? So we know for baker's percentages, we have flour, which is the amount of flour we will use. We'll just call that F. And everything that's based on that, we will use F in this example for the variable name. So F is just the flour weight plus 65% of F, which would be 0.65 F, because this is how much water we're using. And then plus 0.015 F, and this is the amount of salt we're using, plus 0.01 F, and this is how much yeast we're using. So let's say we want to figure out F in this entire formula. Well, there's this very convenient thing you can do for a lot of algebra problems, which is factoring. So let's say 2160, which is our total dough weight, equals F. We factor F out of every single one of these. F times 1 for this term, plus 0.65 for this term, plus 0.015 for this term, and then plus 0.01 for this term. And this accounts for the entire weight, basically, of your dough, eventually. And of course, simple algebra at this point, you just do 2160 divided by all of this, 1 plus 0.65 plus 0.015 plus 0.01 equals F, which in this case, we can calculate that right quick. This would give us around 1290. There's a bunch of decimal places, but that doesn't really matter for this example. Close enough. So 1290 of flour weight. And if we want to verify that this is equal to our original 2160, we can always just plug it into the original formula. So let's take 12 90 plus 0.65 times 1290. You can throw that into our calculator and see what we get. And keep in mind, it will be slightly more than what we started with because we rounded up. But this is just to demonstrate it will be roughly equal. If I didn't round, it would be entirely equal. Which, when we put all this in, equals 2160.75. So, using basic algebra, we have derived a recipe, or we've derived a formula for how much flour we will use in our dough recipe, which in this case would be dough, which we're going to use D, and D is a constant, and in this case we set D to 2160. It will be D over 1 plus 0.65, I'm going to rewrite that 6, plus 0.015, plus 0.01. I'm going to rewrite this just to look a little prettier. D over all of this equals our flour weight. So if you want to come up with a dough recipe and scale it up to any arbitrary amount, this would be how you do it in this case. If you have any other ingredients, you would just simply add their ratios to this original formula here. So like, let's say we add, I don't know, like, let's say we add like 2% of a spice of some sort. That would be 0.02 F. And then you just factor it out. And when you factor it out, it would have plus 0.02 and a closing parenthesis. And you simply do that, and then you divide, you get your dough, you get your flour weight, and you've come up with a recipe for whatever amount of dough you need to make. I hope this was helpful. I might have rambled a little bit. It's kind of hard for me to speak off the cuff like this. If you enjoy the video, give it a like. Don't subscribe because I don't make this kind of content very often. And see you later.